So I'll just hand over to Dr. Danielle Hutchin to take us through her recent research.
Hello everyone, just to say thanks for having me, and I hope this isn't too dry after all the fantastic videos that have been played throughout the event so far. My name is Dr. Danny Hutchin and I am a researcher from Glasgow Caledonian University from the Unis Centre for Social Business and Health. So we were funded by the National Lottery Community Fund to do a 4-year project. It was conducted by a team of researchers from Glasgow Caledonian University with myself as the lead researcher. And we did a project working with 5 sheds from across Scotland, so sheds from rural areas, urban areas, affluent areas, deprived areas, and sheds of all different shapes and sizes. So the key aims of the project were to identify the main development challenges that sheds were facing and find ways to make them more sustainable, so actually working with the sheds. And also to explore using mixed methods the health and wellbeing impacts of shed activities on their users. So as mentioned by Jason, the need for this evidence is so important to be able to kind of support the movement and support the kind of voluntary sector more widely. And it was evidence that we didn't necessarily have in Scotland about men's sheds, with most of the evidence coming from Australia. Next slide, please. So when what we did to look at the kind of main sustainability and development challenges that sheds were facing, we did this through a number of kind of interviews, focus groups, and through participatory workshops with the sheds, and spending a lot of time in sheds myself, which was fantastic. And so what we found that the sheds that we worked with were predominantly older men, also with health issues relating to ageing or long-term disability. We found that the majority of the members that we spoke to were retired and were seeking to kind of escape from the formality of a working environment, so looking for kind of like relaxation and leisure activities. And we found that amongst all of the sheds that we spoke to, there was this kind of key shed ethos that, as mentioned by Jason, the sheds were created and run by the men for the men. And there was also this idea of kind of having the men having a freedom and a sense of informality with no obligation or responsibility. So it's not a workplace, there's no kind of responsibility on people. You go there and you do whatever you enjoy. And we also found that the sheds were more of a kind of informal, organic movement rather than intended for sector organisations. So a lot of the sheds kind of started from the men just meeting in local cafes or in each other's kitchens or gardens and chatting about the fact that there wasn't a lot going on in the community for men outside of, say, the pub or the bookies, and kind of taking it from there. Next slide, please. So because of all these kind of the nature and characteristics of the men's sheds that we spoke to, this really affected their ability to kind of source skilled volunteers to undertake core operational tasks. So as mentioned by Jason, there's always kind of paperwork involved with running a voluntary organisation, whether that be kind of writing funding applications, applying for premises, taking care of kind of membership, holding people's data, bank accounts, all sorts. So when you think of kind of the nature of the retired members who are maybe not necessarily looking to take on that kind of responsibility and literally just want to go there for kind of leisure and relaxation purposes, it also affected the shed's ability to acquire suitable premises. So some of you might know that acquiring premises from kind of public authorities or privately can be quite a kind of onerous task in terms of the paperwork that's involved, the time it takes, negotiations, and dealing with kind of different levels of bureaucracy and stuff. So when you've kind of got a group of men who are just looking to have a good time and have fun, it's often not these aren't the type of tasks that they necessarily enjoy, and it can also kind of take away that enjoyment. Same with sourcing funding and generating income. For anyone, I know myself from writing funding applications, it's never a fun task. It can take a lot of time. Also ensuring the health and safety of members. And as you can imagine, in sheds, they often house a lot of kind of different hand tools and power tools and all sorts of different types of equipment. And when you have members who are all from different abilities and backgrounds, some with kind of complex health needs as well, or issues with mobility or aging related issues, you can imagine the type of kind of things that need to be put in place to be able to ensure the health and safety of members, but also questions about who's actually responsible for that as well. So that kind of links to the final part about the nature of sheds. It affected their ability to welcome members with complex health needs. So being able to ensure that, so say you have members that are coming along who maybe have complex physical health needs, being able to source the funding and the support to be able to facilitate those types of complex health concerns. Next slide, please. So that was just a kind of overview of some of the findings we found from the first aim of the project, which is all about sustainability and development. So I'm just going to talk briefly also about the second aim of the project, which was to look at the impact on the health and well-being of the actual men using the sheds. So what we found that within med sheds there were three kind of core elements. So there was a practical and educational element, so space to take part in practical activities like woodwork, metalwork, or take part in kind of educational activities like cooking or having people coming along and doing health talks. There is also the social and interactive element. So as well as being a space to kind of take part in practical activity, there was a lot of priority placed on the social and interactive elements. So having a space to socialise, whether that just be a small area of the shed where you can stop and have a cup of tea, or a dedicated social area, or just the opportunities that were created kind of for the men while taking part in that. And finally, that what a majorly important area was the inclusive and supportive element of sheds. So having that informal, flexible space where men of all backgrounds can come along to their sheds, bring their own interests, bring their own skills, bring their own knowledge, and also an area where men can gain social support and share their experiences in a safe and male-friendly environment. So, for example, talk about mental health in a space that feels safe and secure and informal, and they're amongst friends. Next slide, please. So just an overview of our findings. So when we analysed all of the findings, we looked at them in terms of mental health benefits, physical health benefits, and benefits to the social well-being of men shed users. So in terms of mental health, we found that men shed users reported having increased confidence, decreased depression and anxiety, an increased overall feeling of happiness and contentment, a sense of relaxation, and that sense of purpose. So just to say, we gathered this information through in-depth interviews. So it was a real kind of way of gathering kind of rich data and spending a lot of time with the shedders and building those relationships for them to be able to tell their stories about the impacts that the shed actually had on them. So just go back to what I was saying about sense of purpose. So that was an important one, in particular for men after they retired or whether they were unemployed. So having that kind of sense of routine in their lives. And as Jason mentioned, a lot of the men that go to sheds, they may be retired or unemployed, but they have such a wide range of skills and knowledge. So you're talking about people who, in their working lives, they had really, leadership roles, professional roles. They worked in IT, they ran factories across the world. So a wealth of knowledge that suddenly feels redundant as soon as they retire. So going to a shed and being able to share all of that skills, all those skills and all of that knowledge that people have kind of acquired through their life with others, really giving them a sense of purpose. So in terms of physical health as well, so you found that we found that men reported that from being more mobile, getting out of the house and actually going to the shed and then being actively on their feet activities, it improved their mobility and decreased their sense of frailty. Also, it was used as a type of kind of pain management. So people who had kind of long-term issues with chronic pain, for example, used the shed as a good distraction from the pain. We also found that people reported an improved diet from going to the shed, especially when sheds had kind of people coming along and delivering educational talks about nutrition, and also men sharing recipes and healthy eating recipes and stuff amongst themselves and cooking for each other, and also decreased alcohol use. So because men's sheds are sober environments, so where you had men who might previously socialise in the pub, they were now basically going to the shed instead. So in terms of social well-being, so you had decreased social isolation and loneliness, increased social networks, and increased sense of belonging to something, belonging to that sense of community. Next slide, please. So what we found overall was that men's shed activities impacted on the health and well-being of men across many different cross-cutting ways that were both obvious and non-obvious. Their informal and flexible nature meant that activities could be tailored to specific needs with men within communities. And success was shown in bringing health education activities to shed environments, such as the delivery of health talks by nurses. Next slide, please. However, what we did find was that sheds didn't want to kind of formalise or become like a formal service, like a health service. There were many kind of issues around members with complex health issues and responsibility for care. For example, members who maybe have early onset Alzheimer's, or, you know, how do you negotiate that? And also some relationships with health and social care practitioners were already strained. So in terms of kind of health and social care workers perhaps phoning up and saying, can I drop off clients to the shed? And that's something that sheds find quite difficult to negotiate, whether they can say no, or, you know, what their responsibility is over care of that person, just as an example. So I'll just finish there. That was a kind of a whirlwind trip around our research project. But we do have a massive range of outputs that are available, most notably the mentioned toolkit, the UK and Ireland, which is a really important resource that we created with a number of partners, including Jason, the Scottish Men's Shed Association. It's a vital resource for those who are thinking about setting up a men's shed, or those who already have a men's shed and are facing kind of sustainability and development challenges. Just as a kind of a one-stop shop for all of your shedding needs. So I'll post a link to the website where you can find that. You can also find that on the Scottish Men's Shed Association webpage as well. But thank you for having me.